What's up, everybody?
Hey.
This is Priyanka. We are hosting GCP Live.
Online meetup number 41.
Great. So today we are going to interview two of our special team members from Zync team, Todd and Adrian. My co-host today is
Stephanie Wong, customer engineer at Google.
And
right. You?
I am Priyanka Vargadia, customer engineer here at Google as well. So Todd, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, I am Todd Previs. I am in full onesie regale. I hope you can all see me because I can't actually see myself, but judging from the smile, I think you can see me. I'm a product manager on the Google Cloud Platform team, and I work on media and entertainment solutions. And it sounds like you are actually not able to see my beautiful onesie, so now I just want to make sure you can see it. Now you can see it.
Yeah, we can see you now. That's awesome costume.
Thank you. I think the giraffe, even though there's no light in this actual room, for some reason the giraffe just radiates light, and I hope you all feel the energy that I'm feeling. And
we are feeling it.
You match the background perfectly.
Yes, so I'm a product manager on the Cloud Platform team on the media group, and I work on rendering and content creation. And today I will speak to you about rendering in our Zync render solution.
Awesome. Do you want to get Adrian to introduce himself? And then
I can introduce myself, sure. Adrian Graham, I'm a cloud solutions architect for media and entertainment based in Los Angeles. And not unlike Todd, I also spent 20 years working in the visual effects industry. So my job, at least, is to figure out how to run all those workloads on the cloud.
Awesome. Sweet. All right, Todd, take it away.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and switch to sharing my screen and give you all a high-level overview and then a bit more of an in-depth overview with Zync. So I just want to make sure, first of all, you can all see my screen right now in the Google Cloud Media slide.
Yes, we can see it.
Great. So I'm going to talk to you mainly about Zync, but I do want to call out the fact that Google Cloud Platform as a whole really addresses and values the importance of media. We look at solving the end-to-end stack, whether it's content creation through our Zync render platform or through our core infrastructure. We have a service called Envato, which is a great product around the OTT delivery and transcode of your content. Obviously, a deep and strong machine learning backbone to that. And looking all the way through to modernization, many different playback platforms from YouTube and from the Daydream VR team and data analytics. So for us, we really look to address all of the different facets in the media ecosystem. But again, I'm going to talk to you about rendering today. So rendering, how about it? We've got some pretty big customers now that are using Google Cloud Platform for rendering. We're really happy to see, in fact, at the Oscars this past year, The Jungle Book, this won the Oscar for Best Visual Effects, and some of it was done on Google Cloud Platform. And this is actually a deployment directly from the customer, MPC, the moving picture company in London, on Google Cloud Platform, and they basically set up their own rendering pipeline. But some pretty impressive numbers here, and some of the cool facts around this were they developed some new hair and fur technology for the animals that were created in this film, and their on-premise resources to scale those machines simply couldn't handle all of the requirements. So they turned to Google Cloud Platform and our capacity and our high memory and high CPU machines to actually render some of these shots that might have been more challenging to do on premise. So you can see some of the numbers there. And all of this rendering, and again, I'll talk about Zync in a moment, it's based on our best-of-breed infrastructure. So whether you're using it for rendering or to host a website or to run analytics, Google Cloud Platform is really unparalleled in the scale, security, the networking, the cost efficiency, our VM offerings, and the depth and breadth of those, and the partnerships that we bring to the cloud platform. So again, I want to talk to you mainly about Zync Render today. And Zync is a software stack, rendering as a service that runs on top of Google Cloud Platform. And we like to say it's designed by VFX artists for VFX artists. So to give you a little bit of history as to really like what Zync was and where it came from, let me take you back about 6 years ago. So Zync was originally developed at a visual effects studio called Zero Visual Effects, and this is a studio in Boston, Massachusetts, where I'm from, although I live in California now. And the idea behind Zync, it was at Zero Visual Effects, which was a studio full of some really talented people that had just gotten together and started the studio, having worked at other major studios, thought they could do it better, more efficiently, and really wanted to be in control of their own destiny. So as they started the studio, one of the things that was a bottleneck for them was the capital investment required to buy a large on-premise render farm to do all the rendering for all the visual effects work that they had. So, we thought, why not use the cloud? Why not look at what cloud can do instead? The fact that we can have this dynamic, highly scalable, efficient rendering solution without having to spend all this money on hardware. Because in our thinking, we were a new studio. We had some big projects to start, but there certainly could be some lulls in time where we wouldn't have as much staff. We wouldn't need the hardware as much. So why pay for all of that up front? Why pay for peak capacity up front when you might not use it for several months afterwards? So from that, Zync was born, and really what it is a rendering solution. And I'll show you a demo in a few minutes. But it's a cloud rendering solution that leverages all of the great things about Google Cloud Platform, such as the scalability, the billing efficiency, the sizing of VMs, and it's all built for artists to enable them to get onto cloud without needing any sort of coding or programming knowledge. And it really is a turnkey click-and-play solution that allows you to get onto cloud. So,
Todd, I'm going to interrupt you a little bit. So could you walk us through, and the audience maybe, what type of customers, what type of people or types of projects that should be that you would recommend should use Zync or look at Zync?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me actually preface that by telling a little bit of a story about how Zync sort of got its first initial exposure as an independent company before we were acquired by Google. So very early on, we started working with a company called Atomic Fiction, and that is a visual effects studio with offices now in the Bay Area, as well as Montreal and I believe Los Angeles. A similar type of studio to Zero Visual Effects, where they were a couple of artists who had actually worked for George Lucas straight out of high school. They were hired literally the day after they finished high school in Seattle. They moved down to work at Lucasfilm. So they worked on the original episodes 1, 2 of Star Wars, did some great work there, and decided to branch out and do their own company. So they very quickly became our first beta customer using Zync. And what they actually did was a feature film called Flight. And this is a movie directed by Robert Zemeckis, who's done Back to the Future, Forrest Gump. So he's an Oscar-winning director. And this movie starred Denzel Washington. And it was a story of an airline pilot who had to land a plane under some difficult circumstances. So a lot of airplanes flying around, crash sequences, a lot of heavy visual effects. And Atomic Fiction was actually able to use Zync to render the majority of that film on Google Cloud, on cloud, I should say. So the fact that they were able to do this with a very small team, where otherwise they would have really needed to have a much larger group of people in terms of managing their infrastructure, in terms of the number of artists, because they'd be simply waiting longer for shots, I think was a real testament to the fact that the cloud and that Zync enabled them to really scale their workflow. So I would say typically today, the Zync customer is working on any number of different projects. It could be shots for feature film. We see a lot of people doing advertising. In fact, this is a shot from a video for the HTC Vive that was done by a studio in San Francisco called Swordfish. We see a lot of graphics for broadcast, especially with those of our Maxon Cinema 4D users. We see some scientific and data visualization now. So it's really a wide, we're in VR, of course, right? So people creating VR content. So anything that's really compute intensive and process heavy, we see users using Zync for. I would say in general, the type of user that Zync appeals to is, I would say, the small or independent user, all the way up to the sort of the mid-sized studio, maybe 50 artists or around that number. Once you started getting beyond that to a scale of an MPC or the mill or really super large visual effects facility, they tend to want to use their own pipeline directly on Google Cloud Platform. But really up until that point, as I was saying before, with sort of a 50 or smaller team, Zync provides a really easy turnkey plug-and-play solution that you don't have to manage anything on cloud. There's no setting up of file systems, of licensing, of VM management. It literally is just click a button inside of your application, which I'll show you in a few minutes, and hit go.
Sorry, I just had a quick question. This kind of follows the trend of really lowering the barrier to leveraging this kind of state-of-the-art technology. So it seems like you mentioned that these were high school students that were able to kind of get their project up and going. So are you seeing anybody, below the 50-person number range, and the students or people outside of the professional space leveraging this technology?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to preface that, I should say the Atomic Fiction folks had worked in the industry for a few years, but literally did start working at Lucasfilm out of high school. But yeah, we see people in school, we're seeing a lot of schools, a lot of academic institutions, because these are programs that are teaching rendering and teaching 3D animation and teaching design to their students. So this is an opportunity for those people. Let's say you've got a senior thesis project that you want to go ahead and render. And typically, a lot of these schools might have limited resources or a lab with certain hours that you can use to render. But now, literally, with a tool like Zync, you can go on the cloud and access 32,000 cores, which is more than most facilities have on premise. You can access that at the push of a button. So we are definitely seeing a broader range of types of users and people that necessarily wouldn't even have the access to these resources able to use stuff now on demand.
That's awesome. Really like democratizing that technology for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. A quote I like to take from Atomic Fiction is they say you can have an ILM size render farm 1 minute and an iMac size render farm the next with cloud. So if you want to go as big as you can do that. And then when you're done, you turn it off. You're not managing any infrastructure. You're not paying for any resources. You're only ever spending money on what you actually consume.
Right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so Zync, as I was saying before, is really designed as a solution that works within your existing workflow, within your pipeline. And we work with all of the major, I should say most of the major software providers out there. So companies like Autodesk that make Maya and 3D Studio Max, Maxon, which makes Cinema 4D, the Foundry, which makes Nuke, Solid Angle, now part of Autodesk, which makes the Arnold renderer, Chaos Group, which makes the Dia renderer. So these are the majority of the tools out there used today by people creating content in the 3D animation space and the 2D compositing space. And all of these tools now are supported within Zync. So what I can do is just make a really quick case study, and then I want to go over to a demo. So we have a broadcaster here. This is an actual broadcaster in New York that uses Zync. And typically what they do, and they're doing graphics for a nightly program. So literally, in some cases, if their artists are creating graphics, they would have to sit there and wait or go home and come back the next morning and hope the render worked fine because they didn't even have a render farm. They would have to render everything locally on their workstation. So typically, they would go ahead and set up their designs, hit render, and then wait 11 hours or come back the next day for the render to be done. Wow. Now, using Zync and Google Cloud Platform, they were able to cut this down to 34 minutes. So you can imagine the time savings here going from 11 hours of locking up a single computer to keeping that computer free all the time and sending the job off to the cloud and getting it back in 34 minutes, as well as the productivity. So if you think about, certainly if you're rendering something during the day and your workstation is locked up, that artist is still costing you money. They're still being paid versus $10 to render that all on Zync and GCP. And you can keep that artist free. You can keep their workstation active, have them create other content. So just another good example of how the cloud is able to really help democratize and make your artists more effective and efficient and improve their productivity. So that's it for my slides. I'm going to go ahead and jump over actually to a quick demo here. I want to show you Zync in action because it is a very easy to use, very quick, simple plugin inside of these applications we support. So I think it'd be nice to show you how exactly it looks. So I'm going to go back to my screen here. But all of you can see my robots fighting here as I scrub through this timeline. Is this correct?
Yeah, we can see it.
Great. So this is an application called Maya. It's one of the most popular 3D applications in the world. It's developed by Autodesk, and I'm actually in our One Market office in San Francisco today, where Autodesk themselves have quite a big office. So shout out to Autodesk. So we want to go ahead and render this. So this is essentially the wireframe of these robots fighting. So this has been modeled. All the lighting and all the textures have been applied, but we don't have the final finished real-time photorealistic output of this, and so we have to render this. So what I want to do to render this is simply click on the Zync shelf here. So you can see there are a bunch of different shelves in my application, and this is really the same for all the other applications we support. It's native within the application. You bring up the Zync shelf or the Zync plugin, and I go to the Zync icon here, and I click on this, and this essentially is my gateway to Google Cloud Platform. Here it's going to pop up, and we'll see the Zync overview with all the different options. And you can see here, this, as I said before, it's your gateway to the cloud. This is your control panel that allows you to submit jobs to the cloud and then have Zync manage everything for you. So I've got a bunch of options here. I'm not going to go through everything, but I do want to point out some of the important features, such as number of machines. So you can choose a different number of machines. And Currently with our users, we give them up to 500 machines. In this case, I'll just go ahead and use 10 machines and machine types. So you can see here we have 8-core, 16-core, 32, and 64-core machines. Google Cloud Platform recently announced 96-core machines, so those will be coming online to Zync very soon. But I can go ahead and choose that, and you can see all of my pricing here is inclusive of everything. So that includes your compute, that includes your file transfer, that includes all of the software licensing. And we also have a class of machines on Google Cloud Platform called preemptible machines. So these are essentially spare capacity machines available at a lower cost. For rendering, it's really great since rendering is a fairly fault-tolerant workload. Especially if you have shorter renders, it's somewhat unlikely that your machines are going to be preempted within the first hour or so. I believe our published preemption rates are between 5 and 15% within a 24-hour period. So I'm going to go ahead and use a preemptible machine. You can see it's the exact same machine configuration, 64 core, 128 gigs of RAM. So it's the same as this standard machine, but it's literally half the price. So who doesn't like to save money? I'll go ahead and choose that. And then we have some project management options. So Zync is really smart in terms of syncing all of the assets needed to cloud. So again, there's no FTPing, there's no having to manage file transfer or storage on the cloud. Zync actually is able to look at all of the data required for these scenes. And in some cases, you could be looking at gigabytes of textures and assets, if not in some cases, terabytes. So Zync is able to look at all that, and it's actually going to upload it for you. And the great thing about Zync is once it uploads that data once, it's not going to upload it again in case anything changes. So typically when you're in a rendering workflow, oftentimes you're doing multiple iterations, you're rendering shots over and over. Maybe you're changing the angle of the camera, some of the lighting, but the base assets and materials that go into the scene are not changing. So Zync is smart about that. It says, all right, I've only ever changed a light here, or maybe I modified the arm movement of the robot. I'm not going to go ahead and re-upload everything. So we're very smart about data access and data management. We built this at a studio that had a 50 megabit down and 10 megabit up connection. So very limited internet, and we tried to design around that to make sure that connectivity, which is typically something that people are concerned about, is really minimized with Zync. We're very smart about our asset synchronization. From there, you have got a bunch of other, oh, sorry, yeah.
A question. How do you control cost in this case? Like, because it does seem like it could get out of hands very easily, right? As you start spinning up instances and as you're using the bandwidth, how does one control cost in this case?
Sure, we've got a few things. So when you actually select the number of machines and the type of machines you're using, you can see your estimated cost per hour. Mm-hmm. You'll have an understanding of that. So we do recommend that everyone run a few test frames. So if you've got 100 frames, run 5 frames. And from that, you can actually plug into our cost calculator to get an idea of what it's going to cost. So let's say I'm using these preemptible machines. I'm using these 64. So let me switch my renderer here. I'm using, in this case, V-Ray for Maya. I'm using the 64-core, 120 gig machines. Let's say I've rendered 5 frames, and the whole thing took me, half an hour to render that, and I have 100 frames in the job. I can plug those numbers in, and I can at least see what the estimate is going to be. In this case, $20.10.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that that's built into the tool, and also that preemptible is such an excellent use case in this scenario. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing we have, I actually might have been disabled for my site, but we have user quotas, which we're in development for. So if I go to, this is the Zync web console, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but in the My Account tab, again, it's been disabled for mine, but we actually have user quotas. So you as the account manager for your Zync site, for your studio, can say, all right, this user only has 5 machines they can run, or this user only has 10 or 15 machines they can run on this job or this project. So there's a pretty high granularity level of control that you can actually cap the number of resources that can be allocated to any user or job. So you can, in fact, ensure that you're not going to go out of control and have a user spinning up 32,000 cores on every single job. Right. We actually do give you those user quotas, and that's going to be rolling out to all users or in the end of the month, at the end of January. So that's
when a customer buys Zync, are they buying it specific to, like, say in this case Maya, or are they just buying Zync and they can use it everywhere they would like? Like in this case, you're using Autodesk Maya for it, but. Yes. Just
yeah, good question. So you can use it on any host application. So when you actually install the client application, which is the only piece of software that runs locally on the machine, besides the plugins, you go to this plugin option, and you can actually see all the different plugins we support. So Maya, Nuke, Houdini, Cinema 4D, and 3ds Max. So if you have any of those applications, Zync will automatically detect that and install those. So at that point, you're free to run jobs. So you're running Zync jobs out of any of those applications. And again, you're only paying for what you consume on a rendering basis, plus the cost of storage on Zync for the application. So there's no, really no configuration that's special or required for any different applications. Like let's say you've got Maya and Houdini and Nuke on your machine. Go ahead and install the Zync client, update the plugins, it'll install on all those, and feel free to run jobs out of any of those at any time.
One follow-up question is whether or not data transfer fees are also included in that cost estimate that you see there. Or I know you mentioned that there's also a lot of cost control mechanisms built in by reducing the layers that it needs to upload each time you render.
Good question. So yeah, so data transfer fees are also bundled into the Zync pricing. The only thing we charge separate for is your actual storage, and that's 20 cents a gig a month. And I can show you that in the UI console in a little bit, that can be managed by the user and deleted at any time. But that storage charge is to allow you to actually upload that storage and leave it up there for the duration of a project. People tend to keep it up there as a backup because you can actually download those files. Let's say your local drive gets corrupted or something happens, then you can easily pull those files back down. But the data transfer fees as well are baked into the Zync cost. So you get essentially two bills. You get one bill for the Zync rendering time, the compute time, and one bill for the storage. And I would say, having now done this business for almost 6 years, compute is typically 85 to 90% of your bill per month. Storage is a very minimal cost relative to what you spend on compute.
Yeah. Is that sitting in cloud storage?
It is. We have a separate special NFS layer we built on top of that. So it's not at the moment generally accessible GCS storage, but it is storage that you can access through our web interface. And I'll show you that in one sec.
Cool.
So I'm going to go ahead and just launch the job here. And it's going to say job submitted to Zync. And basically, as an artist, I can go back and continue to work on this, work on another shot. But what I'm able to do now is jump over to my Zync console. So everybody has a custom Zync web UI. I wanted to have chiro.zync.io, but unfortunately that was taken. So I got demo.zync.io. And you can see from here, I'll actually go to the main page. This is kind of my job and everything that's happening with my job. And I started another job prior to this meetup commencing, just so you'd have an opportunity to see the job in progress. But this is a render manager. And this is really typical of any render manager in terms of the look and layout, whether or not you're doing rendering on premise, which a lot of people are, or cloud. This render manager is really simple and easy to use, and is meant to mimic many of the, or meant to look similar to many of the commercial or open source offerings out there for typical on-premise queue management. So in this prior job running, you can see all the different frames I've submitted. You can see the logs if you wanted to actually bring up the logs. So everything is available to you in real time. You can see the number of machines. Again, I was only using 2 machines here, but the software being used. So Zync will detect, all right, this job came out of Maya 2017. It's using V-Ray 3.6. So those software versions are deployed to the VMs that are spun up. And you can see I have those 2 machines that are running and the status of each of those. And again, I only ran 2 machines because I wanted the job to take a longer time to run. But you could probably do this job. This job usually takes me around 7 or 8 minutes to do, where locally, if I were to render this on my machine, on my MacBook Air here, it would probably take around, I think it's 6 or 7 hours. So again, you can see the benefits of how quickly and easily Zync and Google Cloud Platform allow you to get these jobs done. So this is the job that's currently running. And the great thing that people really tell us they love about Zync is when those files are finished, they simply go to the output directory you specified. There's no need to go fetch files down from storage or FTP or manage everything. They just automatically show up exactly where you tell them to go. In this case, it's the output path that I set in my project, just like I would if I was rendering normally locally. So I can even bring up that output here. And you can see those frames literally have just deposited in my, I'll bring up one frame here for you to see. So it's the first frame of the robots. They're a little bit out of the camera there, but I'll bring up a later frame. So you can see them fighting here. But literally you can see it's 10:55 a.m. and that last frame just deposited as it finished up right now. So those frames just will continue to populate as they finish rendering. And again, I only use 2 machines and I use slower machines just for the purpose of this meetup to be able to walk you through it. But typically if you're running this job, those frames are just popping in one after another as soon as they finish. So it's really nice in that none of the asset management, as I mentioned before, needs to be handled by you. those frames. Zync looks for the necessary materials and textures and project files and uploads those, and we can just see another frame having popped up. As those frames finish rendering, they deposit right back into your output directory. And I've got another fully completed version. I feel like I'm at a cooking show where you throw something in the oven and then you magically go take something out before it's done, or when it's done, another piece of the baking experience. Anyway, so this is a completely finished sequence here, and I'm going to scrub through this because I know there might be a little bit of a lag here. But you can see this was rendered earlier this morning, and you can see I've got this whole thing, and you compare this to the wireframes we had before in Maya versus these beautiful, fully rendered, motion blurred, animated characters fighting here. So you can see just what the final render looks like there.
Really awesome.
Yeah. So a few more things I just want to wrap up really quickly because I know we're almost out of time. But again, we can see the status of all the jobs here. We've got a whole backend. So as I was mentioning before, this obfuscates all of the complexities of setting up and managing your cloud instances. But at the same time, you're able to control those cloud instances. So like with any job, I can restart a job, I can cancel a job, I can add more machines. And on the My Account side, you've got all these backend controls. So if you need to use custom shaders or custom plugins, we support that. You can actually see all the usage. So another thing about cost control is producers at these studios like to be able to say, all right, on this job, I spent this much and I want to bill it back to the customer. So you can actually look at all the projects that have been rendered, all the different options here and how much you spent on any one of these. So you can pull that up. You can pull up all the different users and see how much is this user spending versus that user, and you can specify date ranges and all of that stuff. And in this case, we can see Adrian has not done anything on this particular scene. Maybe he's done something here. Well, Adrian's been very busy on other shots. But anyway, you can see a full cost breakdown. You can add and delete different users, and you can actually manage and see all of your storage here. So I believe before you were asking about storage. So all of your projects are accessible here. You can see how much the disk usage is for each one of those. And again, at 20 cents a gig, you can see some of these, most of these projects are less than 20 cents. So I just tend to leave them up there. But you can delete those at any time. And what you can also do is browse your files. So when I go to browse files, I can actually see all of my projects and all of the data associated with them. So I'm browsing Google Cloud Storage here. But the great thing is everything is repathed to my desktop environment. So literally, if I was browsing locally on my Mac, I would see this exact same file structure. So we really try to obfuscate the complexities of cloud, make this a tool that's available as plug and play and click for the small to medium-sized user. If I go to my images here, these are all the renders I've done, and I can just click on this arrow here to re-download a frame. So let's say, again, maybe my hard drive was corrupted or I accidentally deleted something. I can go back and pull any of those frames, any of those assets that are associated with the project, and I can re-download those. So here you see under source images, these are all the textures, these are all the assets that were required for the render that Zync uploaded. Again, let's say I lost one of those or something happened, I can just simply click on that arrow and re-download those. So we do give you a fairly robust tool for storage management, although it's not within the GCP console. We do try to design a user-friendly UI that works really well for artists. So that pretty much wraps up the Zync demo. Again, you can go back to My Account, main page. One thing I would recommend for anyone who's interested, if you go to zyncrender.com, you can actually see a bunch of tutorials, more information about the product. You can register, and when you sign up with a new account, we take you through the Google Cloud Platform account registration process if you don't already have a GCP account. But every new account comes with $300 in credit. And as you can see from our pricing here, when you're talking about V-Ray for Maya on a preemptible machine running at $2, you've got 120 or so odd hours of free rendering you can do, full production quality, no limits, to really give you an opportunity to go ahead and test out the service and see how it works with your content creation. So
no excuses not to get started, though.
No excuses, no excuses. So yeah, so that's it for me for the demo and the walkthrough. We'll turn it back over to you for any other additional questions.
Sure. Well, I wanted to give Adrian a chance if he had any comments, before we wrap up.
No, I've been working with Todd for about a year and a half here, and we work on both render farm as a service, which is what Zync is all about, as well as infrastructure as a service. So that's running renders using your own components on GCP. But Zync is an amazing solution for like Todd said, small to medium-sized VFX houses or anybody doing architectural renders or game cinematics. The synchronization just happens in the background, and it's all just managed for you. And another thing that Todd didn't mention is the support network. When you sign up as a Zync customer, there's there's online support that they're super responsive to making changes and fixes if bugs are encountered, or if some new drivers come out or some new versions of software come out. They're very communicative with how they follow up on anything that's needed to get you up and running. So check it out at zinkrender.com.
Great. Awesome. Thank you so much to both of you. Priyanka, did you have anything else? Anything on that?
I have one more question. What makes Zync unique compared to other solutions out in the market for rendering?
Sure. I think, there are a couple of things. I think we have the workflow down pretty well. We've been at this now for almost 6 years, the core team. So, and a lot of us come from a visual effects artistry background and a software background. So we understand, how to make this user friendly. And now we're backed by, we're a Google product, right? We were acquired 3.5 years ago. We are backed by Google. So you have the scale of Google Cloud Platform, you have the reliability of Google Cloud Platform, you have the support of Google Cloud Platform. So we think, Google infrastructure being best of breed and a fantastic support and engineering team really helps make this product stand out.
It sounds like there's support coming from GCP as well as support coming from the Zync support team and online forums and the community around it. So it sounds like, you're fully supported from all angles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well,
all right. Well, that's all we had. Those are all the questions.
Cool. Well, thank you so much to Todd and Adrian for joining from Zync. Until next time.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye-bye.